Steph Curry is the best player in the world. This brother is on another level.
Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green.
These finals are about Golden State being the best team in the history of basketball.
Oh my goodness. Steph Curry hurt himself again. Ankle.
4 years, $44 million. That's essentially $11 million a year for a guy with no ankles. That's a horrible contract.
Curry got the three off. Tie game. He's got it. His three.
The Golden State Warriors' journey from being a bottom feeder franchise to a dynasty is one of the most incredible in sports. How they managed to save their team from almost drowning in the waters of mediocrity is a story unlike any other. They didn't luck into the #1 pick and hope that a big name would carry them into relevance. No, the Warriors slowly brought in more and more pieces over the years, with savvy draft decisions and clever free agent signings. The franchise went from one that appeared to be dead in the water with no future to one in the upper echelon of the basketball world. In 2009, they took a chance on Davidson sharpshooter Steph Curry, a pick that was met with question marks at the time. Klay Thompson didn't fall into their lap either. He was picked 11th overall and was also seen as a risk. The Warriors' 2 lottery picks were both reliant on shooting, a concept that hadn't been fully grasped by NBA offenses just yet. At one point in 2012, they had to choose between Monta Ellis or Steph Curry to build around, and they came very close to getting rid of number 30. Steph Curry wasn't always looked at as a future MVP. In fact, there were plenty of critics who believed he never reached his potential due to ankle injuries. Draymond Green was no easy selection either. 34 players were picked over him in the 2012 draft. Firing Mark Jackson in favor for Steve Kerr was viewed with skepticism as well, as some fans felt Jackson wasn't given enough time. It's easy for any spectator to glance at the Warriors dynasty and overlook how improbable building this team was. But the reality is that there were many difficult decisions that were made along the way. Trying to replicate the Warriors core that won them multiple championships is an impossible task, so how did they do it? How did they grow the big three of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green in the first place? How did a 73-win team in 2016 then position themselves to sign a superstar in Kevin Durant? What choices were made that helped them grow into the eventual NBA kingdom that reigned supreme over the basketball world with an iron fist? This is how the Golden State Warriors went from a franchise with no future to an NBA dynasty. The first chapter to this story begins towards the end of the 2008-2009 season, where the Warriors finished with 29 wins. The team was 2 seasons removed from their We Believe playoff run, where Golden State, as the 8th seed, beat the 67-win Mavericks in 6 games. By far the most success they had achieved in years, and one of the most memorable runs in Warriors history. A performance like this in 2007 made the fans in Oakland hungry for success, but 2 years later in 2009, the optimism had faded. Golden State didn't have a star player, just a bunch of role players and young guys. One of those young guys was Monta Ellis, a 23-year-old scorer who was in the midst of averaging 19 a game. For the foreseeable future, it would be Ellis who would be the #1 option, but his scoring didn't lead to wins. They finished the second half of the season losing 18 of 28. Finishing with 29 wins total. Not good enough to earn the #1 pick, and definitely not good enough to make the playoffs, the Warriors were stuck in mediocrity. The 2009 draft lottery saw them earn the 7th pick, with many options at that spot. Some mock boards had them choosing James Harden, Jordan Hill, or even Ty Lawson. The Warriors said no to all of them, and instead selected Davidson guard Stephen Curry. Infamously, boos rained down not from Warriors fans, but from Knicks fans, who also wanted to choose the guard at the 8th pick. It didn't matter. The Warriors had their guy, a 6'3" point guard from a little-known college. Curry had potential, but also had a low floor. His offensive game relied on shooting the 3-ball, when point guards to that point had been focused on playmaking. Some believe Steph wasn't even fit to be a point guard, many believing he'd be better suited at the shooting guard spot. NBA Draft.net claimed he was a poor finisher around the hoop, and that his shot selection had to improve at the next level. Despite these various remarks, the Warriors were confident that a backcourt of Monta Ellis and Steph Curry would bring success. Monta, however, wasn't pleased with this pick. Ellis said that he couldn't play with the rookie. There were already plenty of concerns surrounding number 30, but Steph simply put his head down and went to work. He knew what he was capable of. The 2009-2010 season for Golden State was filled with excitement regarding their newly formed duo, and Curry immediately showed his potential on opening night. Against the Rockets, he scored 14 points on 7 of 12 shooting, with flashy dimes and smooth jump shots. Unfortunately for Golden State, the season wasn't meeting the expectations they had hoped for. They were 14-37 at the All-Star break. Steph had been up and down. Instead, all the attention went to the player wearing number 8. Monta Ellis averaged a career-high 25 points per game, a star shooting guard, and the unequivocal number 1 option. During this time, while the team was struggling, a young Curry tweeted out to Warriors fans all across the globe, telling them that they would figure it out. Post All-Star break, the Warriors won 12 out of 31, a slight improvement that was led by none other than Curry himself. In the final game of the season against the Blazers, Curry exploded for 42 points with 4 threes. By far the most impressive game of his young career. Him and Ellis combined for 76 total. Curry completed his rookie campaign with averages of 17 points on 6 assists, shooting 43% from 3. These numbers earned him a first-team All-Rookie appearance, as well as the runner-up for the Rookie of the Year award. A solid ending to an up-and-down year. This finish left Warriors fans feeling confident that their future was in good hands. Golden State ended with 26 wins, and the Warriors chose Ekpe Udoh with the 6th pick in the 2010 draft. Udoh was a 23-year-old big man with a shot-blocking ability unlike any other. Don Nelson, the head coach since 2006, was fired in favor of assistant coach Keith Smart. In other news, a July 2010 trade to acquire David Lee also caught some attention. Lee was coming off an all-star season. The biggest news didn't come from roster decisions though, rather the purchasing of a franchise. Joe Lacob and Peter Guber both bought the Warriors for $450 million in July of 2010. The hope was that a new ownership could spice things up in the Bay. The Warriors were set. With fresh names and exciting young talent, the expectations were higher than usual. The 2010-2011 Warriors won 36 games, with Monta, Darrell Wright, and David Lee taking control. Ellis continued his high-level scoring, putting up 24, as Lee and Wright put up 16 each. Ekpe Udoh, the 6th pick, was quiet, but he did show flashes with his high-flying blocks. Steph Curry's offense also took a leap. He shot 93% from the line and averaged 18. His field goal percentage and 3-point percentage, both already elite, continued to rise up the ranks. Up to this point, Curry was an exciting prospect with tantalizing potential, but there were still question marks surrounding his game. Could he improve his defense enough to the point where he wouldn't be a liability? Could his finishing and playmaking evolve? And most importantly, could his ankles stay healthy? That's right, throughout the regular season, Steph suffered minor ankle injuries that would add up to the point of needing surgery in the 2011 offseason. Not the most alarming problem in the world just yet, and fans hoped that these issues would subside with time. The Warriors went from 26 and 29 at the All-Star break to 36-46 by the end of the season, thus dropping any chances of a playoff appearance. This disappointing ending brought the firing of rookie head coach Keith Smart. Golden State certainly had some exciting pieces, but they still lacked the firepower to make the playoffs. New additions were needed. The 2011 draft was the perfect opportunity to add another piece to the young core, and with the 11th pick, who the Warriors would take was unclear. Should they take another big man like Jonas Valanciunas, or pick a forward like Kawhi Leonard? The Warriors were intrigued by Washington State shooting guard Klay Thompson and took a chance. Klay was selected number 11 overall, when some mock drafts had him going as low as 17. Thompson was an elite sharpshooter with the potential to become lethal as a perimeter defender. However, his cons as a player shined bright. He couldn't dribble, his finishing was suspect, and he wasn't an elite athlete. Those criticisms all failed in comparison to the mightiest concern of all. What were the Warriors going to do with all these guards? Monta Ellis, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson. One was the new kid on the block, and the other one from the remaining two had to go. That was the mindset for some in the Warrior fanbase, and all of these questions would be answered in the 2011-2012 season. Before that began though, the now vacant head coaching spot needed a new name, and Mark Jackson stepped up to the plate. Jackson didn't have much experience as a coach, but he was a former point guard that had shown leadership capabilities as a player. This upcoming season was set to be a huge one that could have massive effects on the development of the franchise, and it was time to answer some questions. The 2011-2012 season was shortened due to a lockout, and the Warriors fell below expectations. The lack of depth became apparent as the season progressed, and the Stars struggled. Monta Ellis' stats went from 24 points to 21 a game. David Lee was the second leading scorer at 20 a game, and Steph Curry averaged 15. Why? Out of the 66 games played that season, Curry had only played 26. His stats took a nosedive. He went from 18 points a game to a measly 15, and attempted 3 less shots on average. The once rosy future of number 30 had become dampened with rainy clouds, so what was the cause of all of this trouble? Ankle injuries were the key factor, and Steph had many of them. By 2012, he had suffered 11 separate sprains of the ankle, and they were beginning to add up. If this pattern continued, there was a real chance that the guard could never step foot on a basketball court again. Because of this tragedy, the Warriors began to wonder if they could ever rely on Curry for the future. The question of Monta or Steph began to rise up, and there was a good amount of evidence that pointed in the direction of keeping Ellis. Monta was just 25 years old, a borderline all-star, and had been relatively healthy throughout his career. The Warriors sided with Monta and called up the Milwaukee Bucks, offering Stephen Curry in a trade deal for Andrew Bogut. Shockingly, the Bucks declined. They didn't want to take a chance on Steph's injury history. Golden State responded by instead offering Ellis in the deal, and the Bucks agreed. On March 13th, 2012, the Golden State Warriors traded Monta Ellis and Ekpe Udoh to the Bucks for Andrew Bogut. A trade that sent shockwaves through the basketball community, waves that were overwhelmingly negative at that. Warriors fans were disgusted. The team chose an injury-prone guard over an all-star level player, and the owners heard the cries. A month later, on Chris Mullin's jersey retirement ceremony, Joe Lacob was booed.
And when you speak of Warriors history, there's no one
As the greatest fans in the NBA, as everyone stated, sometimes change is inevitable and it's going to work out just fine.
This was the turning point in the Warriors franchise. The front office had just taken a huge risk in choosing to build around Curry, and instead of being met with cheers, they were met with anger. Andrew Bogut was an injury-prone defensive center who wouldn't even suit up for the Warriors until the following season. And speaking of injuries, Steph Curry was shut down for the entirety of the 2012 season as well. He needed ankle surgery. A miserable year for the Warriors, and to many of the fans, the direction the franchise was heading in was shaky at best. Little did they know, the Warriors were pointing in the best direction they had been in decades. All thanks to a small seed that had been planted not too long ago. In April 2012, Bob Myers was promoted to the general manager spot. Just a year prior, he was hired as an assistant GM. All it took was 12 months to earn the top job. The 2012 draft was one of much importance for Golden State, and it began in the first round at the 7th pick. Harrison Barnes was taken at that spot, an athletic forward who would evolve into a key piece down the line for Golden State. Festus Ezeli was chosen at number 30, who would also grow into a valuable backup center. These picks may have taken the headlines, but what was vastly more significant for the team was their second round pick. At the 35th slot, Draymond Green out of Michigan was chosen. Green was an undersized defensive power forward who had been overlooked by many due to his limited ceiling. The Warriors saw his potential and wasted no time in grabbing him. The 2012 draft concluded with Harrison Barnes, Festus Ezeli, and Draymond Green being added to the squad. All three would go on to become noteworthy pieces. The rest of the 2012 offseason saw them acquire Carl Landry and Jarrett Jack, two solid role players. Around this time, rumors of the Warriors leaving Oakland and building a new arena in San Francisco began popping up. The opinion surrounding this was split. Some believed the ownership was selling out. Others thought it could make the team more desirable for free agents. No matter what the consensus thought was, there was one common belief that resonated in the Bay Area: the Warriors needed to win. The 2012-13 season had the highest expectations yet, and for many players, it was make it or break it. For Steph Curry, he just received a 4-year, $44 million deal, one of high risk for the team. If his ankles continued to decline, his career could be in jeopardy. For Klay Thompson, this wasn't a run-of-the-mill season either. The franchise just traded Monta Ellis to give Klay the starting shooting guard spot, so he needed to show what he was capable of. The backcourt was set, and it was time to make a splash. The Golden State Warriors certainly did just that, exploding out the gate, winning 22 of 32. Klay Thompson averaged 16 a game at the age of 22, on 40% from 3 with promising perimeter defense. Andrew Bogut struggled health-wise, but when he was on the floor, the difference was astonishing. His defensive presence as a shot blocker was unlike anything the Warriors had experienced in years. Harrison Barnes was an exciting scorer with a phenomenal leaping ability, averaging 9 a game on 36% from downtown. Jarrett Jack was an important veteran option off the bench, being the perfect second ball handler alongside Curry. And speaking of him, Steph Curry had finally taken the leap to one of the best point guards in the league. His 45% three-point shooting instantly shot him up to one of the greatest shooters in NBA history. No longer were the injuries of his past haunting him. Curry had overcome these fears and ascended into a breakout campaign. He averaged 23 points with 7 assists and 2 steals a night. By far, the most iconic performance was his 54-point bomb on the New York Knicks in Madison Square Garden. This game was a warning to the basketball world of what Curry was capable of. He hit 11 threes out of 13 attempts, an unbelievable number. Shots thrown up as he was falling to the floor, a dribble move into a 3, a pull-up triple. This guy had a lethal repertoire with a quick trigger that could stun any defense in seconds. Curry hitting these triples at such an impossible clip was unheard of, and these earned him a few records. He made a record-breaking 272 threes, overtaking Ray Allen for the most triples in a season. No longer was this the young, unknown prospect of the past. Steph Curry was a legitimate all-star talent. However, the NBA didn't agree. Curry was not elected as an all-star. Tony Parker instead took his spot. This left Steph feeling dejected. He needed to let his anger out on a bigger stage: the playoffs. The Warriors won 47 games, the most wins since 2007, taking the 6th seed in a stacked Western Conference. Golden State was back in the playoffs, and they weren't just some other team. They were a young, gunning, motivated squad that was hungry to win a series. First up came the Denver Nuggets, the perfect story. A veteran Nuggets team versus the young and upcoming Warriors. Game 1 was a suspenseful beginning. Steph Curry hit a clutch 3 to tie it at 95 apiece. However, this smooth 3 barely fazed the Nuggets. Andre Miller took the rookie Draymond Green in an ISO and won the battle. Bad news followed this loss, as David Lee would be sidelined for the remainder of the playoffs with a hip injury. Lee was an all-star, so losing him wouldn't be easy, but what fans didn't know is that this would give the 22-year-old Draymond Green a chance. Golden State swung back with 3 straight victories. The Warriors were now up 3 games to 1, and Curry had dazzled throughout. Game 5 was a Nuggets dub, and Game 6 appeared to be a smooth sailing win for the Warriors. They were up by 18 points with 9 minutes left, but the Nuggets stormed back to make it a 2-point game. Luckily for the Warriors, they barely held on to escape NBA infamy, winning and advancing to round 2. A rocky ending to an exciting series, but this one near collapse in Game 6 did show one thing. The Warriors were young, and their lack of experience could bite them if they weren't careful. The biggest example of this came in Game 1 versus the San Antonio Spurs in the Western Conference semifinals. Golden State led by 16 in the 4th quarter, but let their guards down as the Spurs came back and forced overtime. Another blown lead, and this time there was no good ending. San Antonio won on a buzzer beater 3. A heartbreaking loss that left Warriors fans feeling salty. They could have easily stolen this game. In Game 5, with the series tied at 2, the Spurs crushed the Warriors to take a 3-2 lead. Curry and Thompson struggled, combining for 13 points total on 6 of 22 shooting. Not the performance you'd like out of your top 2 players, and the Warriors ran out of gas as they lost Game 6 at home to drop the series. Not a surprising outcome by any means, and an ending like this left Warriors fans feeling hopeful about the future. Steph Curry averaged 23 points per game in the playoffs. He showed that he could step up against the best teams. Golden State just needed a bit more experience under their belt. The 2013 offseason was crucial for the development of the roster. Golden State wanted Dwight Howard and traded multiple players to clear up cap space to sign him. Dwight may have been the biggest fish, but as the bidding war began, the Warriors turned their eyes to someone else. Andre Iguodala of the Denver Nuggets was a former All-Star player who could be one of the best players on a championship contender. On July 5th, 2013, Iguodala signed a 4-year deal with the Warriors. A fantastic signing that would not only bring a talented veteran, but confidence. Golden State was now a marquee free agent destination, a fact that they would use to their advantage down the line. This upcoming season for the Warriors would answer many questions on whether or not they were for real, and it was time to dominate. The 2013-14 Warriors started out struggling, beginning 13-12, but gained momentum as the season progressed. The team went on a 10-game winning streak and marched into the All-Star break 9 games over 500. Steph Curry continued his progression as a point guard, becoming a 24 points per game scorer with 8 assists. Curry was now looked at as a star player, many believing he was the best point guard in the league. This time around, there was no All-Star snub. Steph made it in as a starter. A monumental achievement that was a testament to the incredible improvement Steph Curry had made as a player. Klay Thompson also took a major leap, averaging 18 a game on 41% from downtown. He was one of the top elite shooters. Him and Curry would become one of the most formidable backcourts in NBA history, earning the nickname the Splash Bros for their sharpshooting prowess. Draymond Green, the former second-round pick back in 2012, was becoming a solid contributor off the bench. David Lee and Andrew Bogut manned the middle, and Andre Iguodala was proving to be a two-way leader. These Warriors were stacked. They won 20 out of the last 29 games to finish with 51 wins. This once again landed them the 6th seed, setting up a date with the LA Clippers. Lob City was a fierce opponent that was hungry to prove they were a legit contender in the West. Chris Paul and Steph Curry would be facing off, a battle that for many would decide who the best point guard was. However, before this fiery series was set to tip off, bad news broke in the Bay. Andrew Bogut, the defensive anchor, was sidelined for the rest of the playoffs with a rib fracture. A terrible loss. The Warriors now had to make up for their lack of a center. On April 19th, 2014, this series began and Golden State seemed unfazed. They opened up with a 4-point victory on the road to stun LA. Harrison Barnes and Steph Curry took over down the stretch, and the Dubs walked away with a win. The Clippers won Game 2 in a blowout, setting up a Game 3 in Golden State that the Warriors almost won. Down by 6 with under a minute left, Steph Curry turned into a flamethrower, nailing impossible threes that almost brought his team back. However, on the final attempt of the game, Steph fell short, with many wondering if Chris Paul got away with a foul. Both teams split the next 2, and Golden State was down 3-2 with a do-or-die Game 6 at home. In this game, Andre Iguodala showed up, nailing a 4-point play in crunch time that all but sealed the victory. Game 7 on the road was setting up to be a nail-biter, and it wasn't going to be easy. The Warriors started by splashing threes, and led by as much as double digits at one point. Watching this game is like viewing the claws of a dynasty, slowly veering up to strike. Each incredible shot by Curry stunned the fans in Staples. Right as the first half buzzer was expiring, Steph hit an unbelievable half-court shot that didn't count, but it served as an eerie reminder of what this guy could become, the greatest shooter of all time. The third quarter saw the Clippers erase a double-digit deficit, and the fourth quarter was down to the wire. The Warriors temporarily took the lead with just a few minutes left, but the Clippers took control and won the game, an agonizing ending to a series that Golden State could have won. Many Warriors fans took solace in the idea that had Andrew Bogut played, they would have advanced. Nonetheless, the Warriors got some more experience and headed into the 2014 offseason with motivation. Golden State opened the offseason by firing Mark Jackson in favor of Steve Kerr, a decision that surprised spectators as Jackson had only been given 3 seasons to show what he could do. Nonetheless, Kerr was a former champion as a player that could transform the offense into an even bigger superpower. The biggest moves weren't who they signed though, but rather who they didn't acquire. Kevin Love, an all-star caliber power forward, was available on the market, and the asking price was Klay Thompson. Golden State came very close to parting with Klay in this deal, but Jerry West, the head consultant of the team, threatened to quit if this deal was complete. Bob Myers, the general manager, and Joe Lacob, the owner, were both on board with trading Klay, but Jerry West and Steve Kerr saying no forced them to back down. A Kevin Love-Klay Thompson swap came very close to happening, and had it been agreed to, the Warriors dynasty would have looked a lot different. Just like that, the offseason was complete. With some added bench pieces and a new head coach, things were looking exciting for Golden State. No matter how excited spectators were, nobody could have predicted the absolute onslaught Golden State would launch on the league. The 2014-15 Warriors had the dream season, winning a franchise record 67 games. Steph Curry went from an all-star to the MVP winner, averaging 24 a game with 8 assists, 2 steals, on 44% shooting from downtown. Once again, Steph broke the record for most threes in a season, making 286 of them. Curry was a show-stopping superstar, a player that could be the sole reason any arena was sold out. The title of greatest shooter ever was previously held by Ray Allen, but the tide had shifted. Steph Curry now held the crown. This phenomenal season combined with the Warriors' spectacular record landed Curry the MVP. Once upon a time, Steph was viewed as nothing more than an injury-prone young guy who would never get the chance to show what he could do. Now, just 3 years later, Curry was an MVP, standing on top of the basketball world. This wasn't a solo fight though. Klay Thompson, fresh off of his max contract extension, was just as important to the success of the Warriors. Klay averaged a career-high 22 points per game, and when he was hot, he was unstoppable. A clear example of this came in a January 2015 game against the Kings, where Klay scored 37 points in a quarter. He shot 13 of 13 from the field, hitting 9 triples. Thompson now held the record for most points in a quarter, and he was also selected to be an all-star. The Splash Bros were an excellent duo, but one of the more overlooked pieces was Draymond Green. David Lee, the longtime starter, injured his hamstring before the season began. There to take his place was Green, a defensive stud with the heart of a lion. Draymond was the glue of the team, a great playmaker and defender who wasn't scared of anyone. Andre Iguodala, the main prize of the 2014 offseason, didn't start a single game this season. The reasoning lied in Steve Kerr, who started Harrison Barnes instead. Iguodala would serve as a key piece off the bench, and he was more than happy to take this role. The Warriors had overwhelming depth, a clear #1 option in Curry, and a solid group of players around him. 67 wins is no easy feat, and the #1 seeded Warriors headed into the 2015 playoffs with cautious optimism. On one hand, the team's talent gave fans confidence that they could make a deep run. On the other hand, they were still an overall young team, so pessimistic critics feared the lack of experience would hurt them again. The 2015 playoffs erupted with the Warriors sweeping the Pelicans with ease. Steph averaged 33, Klay averaged 25, and Golden State quickly took care of New Orleans. Game 3 saw the Warriors overcome a 5-point lead with 17 seconds left. Steph nailed 2 amazing threes to force overtime. Yeah, he was an MVP. Yeah, he was the 3-point king. But most importantly, Steph Curry was becoming the face of the NBA. Round 2 saw the Memphis Grizzlies step up to the plate, and at one point, the Grizzlies had the upper hand. Game 3 was a 10-point victory in Memphis that saw Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol combined for 43. The Grizzlies had 2 dangerous big men that were feasting in the paint, and panic was rising in Dub Nation. There was only one man that could stop the burning fire, but would he step up? Steph Curry certainly rose to the occasion, scoring 33 in Game 4 to crush the Grizzlies. Then in Game 5, Klay Thompson was the leading scorer with 21, and the Warriors once again destroyed their opponent. The momentum was flipped on their side once again, all thanks to the work of the Splash Bros. Game 6 was yet another Chef Curry moment. Steph scored 32 and caught fire in the 4th quarter to seal the series. The best moment was his half-court shot as the 3rd quarter came to an end. For any other player, this would be luck. But for Curry, the 18,119 in attendance knew this was pure skill. The Warriors had avoided what could have been an upset because their top players stepped up, and it was time for the Western Conference Finals. The Houston Rockets were the only team that separated the Warriors from an NBA Finals appearance, and it wouldn't be a cakewalk. Those supporting James Harden believed he deserved the 2015 MVP, so it was up to Steph to prove them wrong. He did just that. The Warriors opened up with 2 straight close dubs at home. Golden State executed down the stretch to win Game 1, and Game 2 saw a beautiful double team by the Splash Bros to force a Harden turnover. Gutsy performances, and a blowout victory by Golden State on the road in Game 3 all but sealed the series. The Warriors wrapped it up in 5, and they were headed to the NBA Finals with swagger in their step. By this point, fans in the Bay were astonished at how far the Warriors had made it. This had truly been the dream season, and it was only just beginning. The 2015 Finals featured the young Duckling Warriors versus the LeBron James-led Cavs. The Cleveland Cavaliers had formed just 1 year prior with the sole purpose of winning a championship. LeBron James was motivated to win a ring for his city, but he was already missing one of his sidekicks. Kevin Love had been injured previously in round 1. The Warriors and Cavs opened up with a fierce battle in Game 1, and Golden State pulled away in overtime to win it. A fantastic beginning that showed the Warriors were legit and ready to compete. The biggest news from this game wasn't necessarily the win, but rather more injury news coming from the Cavs side. Kyrie Irving suffered a knee injury that would put him out for the rest of the series, which gave Golden State a clear advantage over their opponent. However, Game 2 brought little reassurance. Curry airballed a possible game winner in overtime, and his team lost. Game 3 was another L, and the Warriors had found themselves in a 2-1 hole. The narrative at this moment had shifted from Curry praise to Matthew Dellavedova praise. Delly had been gaining headlines for how he was guarding Steph, some making the claim that Dellavedova was the Curry stopper. These claims were quickly shut down though. Steph scored an efficient 22 in Game 4, as his Warriors crushed the Cavs. Game 5 was now building up to be one of the most important games in Warriors history, and Steph Curry left everything on the court in a marvelous show. He scored 37 points with 7 threes, dribbling into impossible shots that looked video game-esque. The Warriors were up 3-2 and were 48 minutes away from achieving the first championship in 40 years. Game 6 saw the Warriors leap in front from the opening tip, and as time expired, a wave of relief flowed through the city of Oakland. The Golden State Warriors had won the championship, the perfect end to an incredible season. Andre Iguodala won the Finals MVP, which may have surprised some, but Iggy's defense on LeBron throughout the series was impressive enough to earn him the trophy. Golden State had achieved what appeared to be impossible just a few years prior. The franchise's history of failure and mediocrity had been washed away thanks to the Splash Bros and company, and the best part about all of this is that their core wasn't even in their prime yet. Steph was 26, and Klay and Draymond were both 24. That combined with an impressive front office, and a head coach in Steve Kerr who just proved himself. The future for Dub Nation seemed promising. The 2015 offseason was one of minor decisions for the team, their one highlight being the drafting of Kevon Looney with the 30th pick. Looney would grow into a valuable asset for the group, but it would take a few years for him to gel. Draymond Green also inked a 5-year max deal, a worthy bag for the former second-round pick. Surprisingly enough, despite the rampage the Warriors just inflicted on the league, there were still doubters. Critics felt the Warriors' 2015 run was solely achieved due to injuries on the Cavs side, and had Cleveland been healthy, the Warriors would have been slain. Negative analysis like this may have bothered the Warriors fanbase, but to the players, they couldn't care less. They'd been through far worse before. The 2015-16 Warriors were one of the greatest teams ever, and they didn't miss a beat. From the opening tip of the first game, Steph Curry was lights out and locked in. Only a few games into the year, Curry dropped 53 on New Orleans' head. The type of threes he was making were shots that had never been seen before, and he was leaving the crowd in awe. Just a few weeks later in December, Curry scored 14 points in 2 minutes versus the Hornets. The fans in the arena were shocked. The announcer left speechless. Steph Curry, to many, was the best player in the world.
Curry. Oh. Just incredible.
The Warriors started the season 24-0 and continued their dominance past the All-Star break, coasting to a 53-5 record. This wasn't just any ordinary team. They had the chance to capture the best record in NBA history. Curry may have been getting the attention, but Klay Thompson and Draymond Green were both incredibly valuable to the success of the team. Klay was the peanut butter to Steph's jelly, a lockdown perimeter defender and a lead catch-and-shoot man. Thompson averaged 22 on 42% from downtown, great numbers offensively. Defensively, it was Draymond Green who was the anchor. His 14 points per game weren't show-stopping, but his 1.5 blocks and 1.5 steals were significant. Green was also a sniper beyond the arc, shooting 38% from 3 on the year. The Warriors piled on more and more wins, reaching 60 dubs in March, 70 in April, and 73 on the final game of the season. No ending was more fitting than Curry scoring 46 with 10 triples, which gave him a record-setting 402 threes on the season, the most in NBA history by a wide margin. Steph was unanimously the best shooter ever. Speaking of unanimous, this 73-win season, combined with his 30 points per game average, landed him the unanimous MVP award. The first unanimous MVP ever, and this decision caught nobody off guard. The Warriors' trio of Curry, Thompson, and Green was dominant, but what made them earn 73 wins so effortlessly? A combination of factors were the reason, one being out of their control. The San Antonio Spurs, a fellow rival in their conference, won 67 games. The Warriors knew that if they took their foot off the gas and collected a few losses, the Spurs would be right there to snatch the #1 seed. When it came to roster construction, Golden State's depth and coaching was a major factor in their success. Harrison Barnes was a 3-and-D wing, Andrew Bogut was a shot-blocking big, and Andre Iguodala was a threat off the bench. The ball movement displayed on a nightly basis was dazzling. There was no selfishness on this team, just one goal: winning. That goal had a chance to be realized in the 2016 playoffs, and the 73-win #1 seeded Warriors met a familiar foe, the Houston Rockets. This matchup was beginning as any other #1 seed versus 8 seed series would go. The Warriors were up 2-1, but in Game 4, the first crack began forming in the foundation. Curry tweaked his ankle in Game 1, which would sideline him for Games 2 and 3. Where the bigger problem occurred was in Game 4. Steph slipped and injured his knee towards the end of the half. Nobody knew what to think about it at first, but when Game 5 rolled around and Curry was on the inactives list, fear began rising. The chef was out for the rest of round 1, a major blow to his team. The Warriors were unfazed though, winning this series in 5 and moving on to round 2. The Blazers were up next, and for the first 3 games, Curry remained out. Klay Thompson took this personally, scoring 37 in Game 1 and 27 in Game 2, both in wins. The Blazers shot back and won Game 3, setting up a crucial Game 4 in Portland. As the suspense was building, as the Blazers laced up their sneakers, and the motivated Warriors were preparing to practice, news regarding Steph Curry and his health came into the public eye. He was back. Game 4 of the Blazers-Warriors series was pure Steph Curry madness. He scored 40 points to deliver his team the dub. He started out slow, but once overtime came around, his shots turned into fire. 3 after 3, he was unstoppable, and he knew it, yelling the words, "I'm back," as the Warriors bench exploded. This was an iconic moment of epic proportions, and the Warriors used this momentum to move on to the Western Conference Finals in 5. The OKC Thunder were an appropriate foe for round 3. A superstar duel between two of the best in the world was set to take place. However, what followed was less of a duel and more of a one-sided combat. The Thunder swung first and won Game 1. Then in Games 3 and 4, OKC won by a combined 55 points total, with Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant outplaying Steph and Klay. A nightmare had unfolded, and the only way out was to win 3 straight games, a feat which seemed impossible. A loss like this as a 73-win team would certainly go down as one of the biggest collapses in NBA history. Game 5 was a do or die, and the Splash Bros stepped up, combining for 58 points total to win by 9. A much needed victory, but many critics believed Game 6 in Oklahoma City would be when the Warriors season would come to an end. A hostile crowd awaited the Warriors, with mighty expectations ahead. No one could predict what would happen next. Game 6 of the Thunder-Warriors series may be the most impactful 48 minutes of play in NBA history. The Warriors saved their season, as Klay Thompson had a mind-boggling 40 points with 11 threes. Those numbers don't do enough justice to the pure dominance that was on display. Klay was unstoppable. Each three was a knife into OKC's heart. Steph Curry wasn't half bad either. 31 points was no walk in the park, and he closed it out with a smooth bank shot. All of the energy was sucked out of the arena. Any Thunder fan hoping for a finals appearance was smacked in the face with a harsh dose of reality. The Warriors were just too good, and their confidence levels were at an all-time high heading into Game 7, which they won. One of only a few 3-1 comebacks in NBA history. Steph Curry nailing threes as the game came to a close was a fitting finish. The Warriors were back in the finals, looking scarier than they had in the past. Their opponent on the biggest stage would be the Cleveland Cavaliers for the second straight year, and this time things were different. The Cavs were no longer the undermanned group of the past. This time they had Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love at full strength, so an all-out war was expected. The 2016 finals began with a Golden State W in Game 1 thanks to the bench, and another Warrior victory in Game 2 courtesy of Draymond's 28. In Game 3, with a chance to put the series on ice, Steph scored a measly 19, Klay scored 10, and Draymond put up 6 in a loss. Not the type of production you'd like from your best players, but Game 4 was an opportunity for the Big Three to redeem themselves. Steph Curry silenced the doubters with a 38-point bomb in Game 4, a much-needed performance that guided Golden State to a win. Yet, in the midst of this victory, the second crack formed in the foundation of the Warriors' title hopes. Towards the end of Game 4, Draymond Green and LeBron James got into a bit of a trash-talking altercation. Green was given a flagrant foul for this, and as a result, he was suspended for Game 5 of the finals. Throughout the playoff run thus far, Green hadn't been on his best behavior. He was handed out a fair share of technical fouls, and it had caught up to him. The Warriors now had to head back home without one of their most valuable pieces, but the team had little doubt. To spectators, they were prepared for the situation ahead, but what was shown on the court in Game 5 brought skepticism. The Warriors lost by 15 on their home floor, as LeBron and Kyrie both scored 41 apiece. Complete and utter domination that took the Warriors aback. This series was far from over. Not to mention, in this game, Andrew Bogut suffered a knee injury that would sideline him for the rest of the series. The Warriors now lacked their defensive anchor, and this loss gave the Cavs a huge advantage in the interior. Still, up 3-2, the Warriors had plenty of reassurance that Game 6 in Cleveland with Draymond back could go their way, but it didn't. The Cavaliers destroyed the Warriors in Game 6 thanks to a 41-point performance by LeBron, and this finals was tied at 3 games apiece. Steph had a 30-piece, but it came on 40% shooting, and to fans, it felt like something was off. Game 7 came around in Oracle Arena. An entire historical season came down to 48 minutes.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! Curry left wide open! Right between the eyes. Now taken by Iguodala. Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James!
93-89 was the final score, with the lasting images being a LeBron block on Andre Iguodala and a Kyrie 3 in Curry's face. A disastrous finish to a spectacular season. The Warriors became the first team in NBA history to blow a 3-1 lead in the finals. Curry had vastly underperformed, only averaging 22 points per game on 40% field goal shooting. Klay wasn't anything special either. His field goal percentage dropped by several margins on the biggest stage. Harrison Barnes also played horrific basketball, averaging 9 points on 35% field goal shooting. Some blame Curry's knee sprain for his poor finals play, but history won't remember these claims. Instead, they'll remember this as the ultimate chance at a title being squandered. The 2016 offseason for the Warriors was expected to be filled with minor decisions, but what unfolded was one of the most shocking events in sports. Kevin Durant, the former MVP and multiple-time scoring champ, was growing frustrated in Oklahoma City. The Warriors, unbelievably so, had a max contract slot left on their team. The reason for this lied in multiple factors. Steph Curry's contract, which at this point still had him receiving $11 million per year, gave the Warriors more cap space. That combined with the NBA salary cap jump gave Golden State just enough for a max spot, and KD happily signed. A decision that seemed inconceivable. A 73-win team just added another MVP. All it cost was letting go of Harrison Barnes and Andrew Bogut's contracts. Any negative feelings regarding the 2016 finals for Warriors fans were swept away in an instant thanks to this decision. KD turned this squad from a consistent finals contender to a dynasty in the making. As basketball fans around the globe watched in jealousy, the Warriors smirked with confidence. As a result of this decision, the Warriors won the following 2 championships in 2017 and 2018. In 2017, they won 67 games and steamrolled through the playoffs with a 15-1 record. In the finals, they got revenge on LeBron, Kyrie, and the Cavs, gentlemen sweeping them. Then in the 2017-18 season, they smoothly sailed into 57 wins, but this time things were different. They had a competitor in the West. The Houston Rockets were eager to destroy this dynasty in the making. Those 2 teams met in the Western Conference Finals, and in a battle that went to 7 games, the Warriors came out on top. The Rockets missed 27 straight 3-pointers in Game 7, and the Warriors overcame a 3-2 series deficit to move on to the finals. In the finals, they handled a familiar foe in the Cavaliers with ease, sweeping them and securing their third championship in 4 years. The Warriors' 2018 offseason was highlighted by the signing of injured big man DeMarcus Cousins. Boogie was, at that point, the best center in the league and was recovering from a torn Achilles. He wanted to win a ring, and what better destination to choose than the Bay Area? This decision left NBA fans feeling appalled at how unstoppable the Warriors appeared on paper. But to Golden State, this acquisition was a testament to how great of a free agent destination they'd built themselves to become. The 2018-19 season for the Warriors was highlighted by locker room issues with Draymond Green and Kevin Durant, both getting into visible verbal altercations on the bench. Steve Kerr, the coach, and Bob Myers, the general manager, both chose to sweep this bad blood under the rug, which caused it to fester and hurt the locker room environment.
So just for my own personal sanity, how much did our argument against the Clippers drive you to ultimately lead the Warriors?
It wasn't the argument, it was the way that everybody, Steve Kerr act like it didn't happen, Bob Myers and tried to just discipline you and think that would put the mask over everything.
The 2019 playoffs saw the Warriors reach the finals once again, but their team was far more depleted and vulnerable than years past. Kevin Durant had been dealing with a calf injury throughout the playoffs, DeMarcus Cousins had quad problems, and Andre Iguodala had a hamstring injury. Still, the Warriors were back in the finals for the 5th year in a row, and were hungry for a three-peat. However, what followed was a series loss to the Toronto Raptors in 6, and injuries played a factor in that too. Kevon Looney fractured his collarbone in Game 2, and missed Game 3. Klay Thompson suffered a hamstring strain, and he too missed Game 3. Lastly, two of the most devastating of them all, Kevin Durant suffered a torn Achilles in Game 5. The superstar for the Warriors was gone, and would now be out for the foreseeable future. In Game 6, in the Warriors' final matchup in Oracle Arena, Klay Thompson tore his ACL, and the Warriors lost. A catastrophic end to one of the most formidable dynasties in sports. Kevin Durant then departed in the 2019 offseason for Brooklyn, thus ending the big three of Steph, Klay, and KD. The Golden State Warriors dynasty and how they built it is one of the most remarkable stories in sports. They weren't handed a #1 pick and built their core through the lottery. Steph Curry, before turning into the basketball wizard we all know today, was hampered with ankle injuries for the beginning of his career. At one point, fans wondered if number 30 would ever reach stardom, and feared he would go down the path of a bust. That's what makes the uprise of Steph Curry that much more sweet. He felt the concrete of rock bottom, yet climbed his way up the pole to the upper echelon of basketball. Klay Thompson and Draymond Green were no sure things either. Green worked his way off the bench as a second-round pick, and became a star. Klay Thompson went from an unknown off the bench to the second splash bro and one of the greatest shooters ever. The Warriors received much flack for their firing of Mark Jackson and hiring of Steve Kerr in 2014, but that decision turned out to be one of the most significant. Kerr revolutionized the offense and was a major factor in the jumps of Steph and Klay. Their championship win in 2015 represented years of failure finally being burnt into ashes. The Warriors were back on top of the basketball world for the first time in 40 years. Then, just 1 year later, they faced their biggest failure yet, blowing a 3-1 lead to the Cavs. They responded by using their cap space to their advantage, signing Kevin Durant, and the rest was history. Golden State won 2 more rings and didn't take their foot off the gas a single time. They knew what it was like to be in the basement of the West, to be one of the worst teams in the league, and now that they were at the top, they were going to hold on for dear life. The Warriors losing in 2019 and failing to three-peat certainly stings for the Bay Area fans, but it's hard to look back at this run as a whole and feel disappointed. 3 rings, 73 wins, 2 MVPs for Steph Curry, a 37-point quarter by Klay Thompson, a Defensive Player of the Year award in 2017 for Draymond Green. The Warriors trusted they could run their offense through shooting back when such a concept was nonsensical. In 2014, they were viewed as a fun, up-and-coming team with potential, but nobody could have predicted the storm they'd inflict on the league. 5 years later, their reign of terror is remembered for its fiery offense, booming star power, and of course, the winning.